Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Friday, February 13th. Happy day before Valentine's Day. It's about 12:03, and this is a meeting of the Election Law Subcommittee of Government, Labor, and Elections. I'm Delegate Chris Fair, the chair, and we are going to be discussing four bills today. The fifth bill, HB 50 for special elections, we're going to bump that to another subcommittee meeting to a later time. So we are going to get right into it and start with House Bill 44. So we're going to be discussing, this is Delegate Feldmark's bill on plain language requirements and procedures. And the bill just basically outlines a process by which we will be considering plain language for ballot initiatives. So looking at referendum votes and things like that for when these issues come to the ballot and how that language is written. And so it has some definitions built in here to make sure that the bill is properly aligned when it is written, when the language is properly aligned when it is written, as well as a brief statement explaining the purpose of the ballot initiatives to help voters understand better exactly what it is that they're voting for. There's a couple of interesting components to the bill, so I want to turn it over to Stan and ask Stan if you could just weigh in on some of the more interesting, pieces to the bill as far as what we're considering and what we're not considering.
Sure. So, so the plain language requirement would apply both to the petition pages that are circulated for signatures, then the ballot question language. There's also a requirement that the text of the various enactments that are being voted on in a ballot question be available on the state and local board websites so people can see the full text if they want to. And then there's also there's a comment process. So there's the plain language statement has to be put out there, and then public comment is offered on that and can be considered for revision. And then I guess the other interesting thing to note is that the General Assembly would retain the power to prescribe the ballot question language under most circumstances, which is something they have the power to do now. The only exception is for an enactment that's actually petitioned to referendum by the voters through the collection of signatures. That the Constitution requires that the Secretary of State do that, so that's not changed by this bill. But the Secretary of State would have to use plain language when writing the ballot question.
So just to be clear, if we do a piece of legislation that requires a ballot question, then the state retains the right to write that question. If it's petitioned to be on the ballot by the voters, then the Secretary of State would be writing the question. What instances are there where where the state isn't writing the question, for example?
Right. So like for many local referendums, so for example, county charter amendments, also if a local enactment is petitioned to referendum, which is also something that can happen, and then also for municipal ballot questions. In those cases, it would be the county attorney or the municipal attorney that would be writing the language. But this does require them to use plain language in doing that.
Great. And before I turn it over to Delegate Terrassa, the State Administrator Demarinis, did you have any weigh-in on this bill? Any concerns from the state board level about it?
No, I did not.
Okay, great. Thank you. Delegate Terrassa, I see your hand is raised. Please, over to you.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I like this bill a lot. My questions are more sort of just trying to understand how the whole thing works. So it applies to local elections as well, local ballot questions as well as statewide ones, right? And when would the legislature be involved in changing the language?
So that's just an option that the General Assembly has, that it's sometimes exercised. For example, the constitutional amendments, some recent constitutional amendments, for example, the cannabis one, the General Assembly just set out in the law how they wanted the question to appear on the ballot. And that's something that you all have the option to do.
But if it wasn't doesn't it have to be in plain Like, what if the state legislature did it and it wasn't in plain language? I just want to make sure this is strong enough to get the plain language we're trying to get. I like what the sponsor is trying to achieve here.
Well, the plain language will be the default, and then the General Assembly has the option to do it its own way. But I would presume that you all would, that the questions have been in plain language, and the General Assembly has written the language. They've been pretty straightforward. But you all have the option to write it however you want.
And then generally sorry, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay, I have a few questions if that's okay. How do the ballot questions generally get written? I'm familiar with them on the county level, but I didn't know, are they written by the Board of Elections, or how do we get to the language of the ballot questions as like now?
It's generally the Secretary of State.
Oh, Secretary of State. Okay, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And then the language of the whole thing is available online anyway, because it's in whatever was passed, but
Mm-hmm.
this requires it to be in a more prominent place or and I'm sorry, I haven't looked at the language of the bill in a couple of days.
So it requires that it be on the state board and each applicable local board's website in a manner widely accessible to the public at least 90 days before the general election.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much, Delegate Terrassa. And I'm just trying to dig through my testimony here. Did Mayo weigh in on this, the Maryland Association of Election Officials?
Just looking at it myself.
Yep.
And it does not look like they did.
Okay, good to know. And so I think that Delegate Terrassa's question posed an interesting question. And Delegate, as we move forward with this bill, if you'd like, I would love to give you a little latitude to look into that question about the plain language with the state piece of it. Does any other delegates on the call have any questions about the bill that they wanted to address, or any concerns they wanted to raise? All right, seeing none, we're going to put that aside and we're going to move on to our next bill, which is House Bill 115. This is Delegate Wilkins' bill for individuals released from state correctional facilities. This is an automatic voter registration bill. So what we're looking at in this bill is individuals who are coming out of the criminal justice system. They're going through reentry. Currently, there is a process for them to become registered to vote again. Some have commented how challenging that process has been, and that they believe that if they were registered to vote prior to incarceration, and even if not registered prior to incarceration, that they should be registered to vote upon release. And so to make sure that that goes in place, we do have two amendments on the bill, which I'm just going to go over in concept real quickly with you because they're not terribly complicated. And so we didn't see the necessity to have it actually printed up at this moment. But the only amendments would change the effective date. That's to help State Administrator Demarinis get this this process rolling from January 1st, 2027 to January 1st, 2028. His office believes that he can have this program up and operational by then and in time for the 2028 election cycle. And then the second is to add the exact information that the correctional service needs to send over. So we want to make sure that they send over not just their name, but also their social security number and date of birth. And that would help to ensure that that the state board has the appropriate voter that is being re-registered to vote automatically. Mr. Demarinis, did I get the two amendments correct? I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything.
Yes, yes. And then also we just wanted to clarify that the identity of the agency that provided the information to us is excluded from public viewing as well. That is consistent with all the other AVR agencies that we have with it.
And so, Stan, I'll turn it over to you. And real quickly, does the bill opine on whether or not the person was registered to vote prior to incarceration? I know I spoke earlier, and I just want to make sure I'm clear on that.
Yeah. So
does it matter whether or not the person was registered prior?
Yeah, so they're only going to be automatically re-registered if they were registered prior to being incarcerated.
Got it. Thank you. My apologies for the misstep there. And Delegate Tarassa, over to you.
Okay, wait, now, this only registers them if they were registered before?
Yeah, so that's because they're the only people that would be in the state board's database. So the idea is, so what happens when somebody goes into incarceration for a felony, their registration is canceled, but their record still exists in the statewide voter registration database. And this would basically flip the light switch back on when they get out without them having to do anything, so that they can vote again. There would still be an opportunity for anyone who was not registered prior to being incarcerated to register on a paper form. Under current law, they have to be given a paper form in their release package that is a voter registration form, so they can submit that.
Okay, great, that's helpful. And then the other question comes to me because of another bill we had. But you said about the amendment you were talking about, Mr. Chairman, which is the social security number. And my understanding from another bill that we had testimony on, that getting the social security number can sometimes be a challenge. In part, I thought the testimony was yesterday or the day before, or recently, that the federal government won't, or the Social Security Administration won't give them the social security number until 120 days. I could have all this information wrong, but something like this, like 120 days before their release date. And I just want to make sure we're not preventing them with that amendment. We're not somehow putting up an additional barrier to getting re-registered. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? I can try to explain more if it's not making sense, but I thought on another bill, we heard something about the difficulty in getting social security numbers for some of the folks.
I was under the impression that they would naturally have that information, but Stan or Jared, if either of you can weigh in, if you've heard that concern.
I haven't, but
I have not. I have not either, because delegate. So it's something that they already have going in, and so it's to match up everything for us to make sure that we're basically, as Stan said, turning the lights on the correct person. So
right, but
and they can also provide us with their their old driver's license number as well, if that's still active. All the information that when they were going in to being convicted and incarcerated, for us to turn off the lights have to be given so we can turn back on the lights.
Okay, but Mr. Chairman, I know we're not voting on any of these today, so maybe I can ask around, or if there's somebody else there could. I just want to make sure if you're requiring social security number, I hear what you're saying, Mr. Demarinis. But I'm still confused about how it would play in. I just want to make sure that doesn't become a barrier if you're going to amend it that way, if that makes sense.
Well, I guess the thing is, I'm sorry, in order to be precise, because it could be a similar name like John Smith, date of birth. Like, we don't necessarily know if that's the same John Smith that we was incarcerated, not incarcerated. This is the identity portion of it. So we would need that anyway when they would register.
Originally.
Yes.
can I ask a question, Mr. Chairman, of Jared?
Please, Stan, go ahead.
So Jared, is it correct that you would need either the social security number or the driver's license number? You wouldn't necessarily need both. So
that is correct. Right.
Oh,
all
okay.
we need is something to have, and the amendment it's basically the last four digits of social security number, the driver's license, or the or state issued ID that was, if they didn't have a driver's license, the normal stuff that we need to have it. So yes.
Okay, perfect. I didn't see the amendment yet, obviously, and so thank you. That satisfies me.
And that's exactly where we were, why it's so important we have this meeting. So I want to take a brief programming moment here and just say, I've noticed the internet is unstable. It seems, I don't know if it's just my office for fun or if it's everybody. So if you see me cutting in and out, I apologize in advance. Just keep rolling along as we go here, but over to you, Delegate Tomlinson.
Thank you, Delegate Fair. I had a question or two, and anybody can answer it who has an answer. I'm looking at the fiscal note, voter qualifications. I think it's page 2. So currently, so it says a person who has been convicted of a felony and is currently serving a court-ordered sentence of imprisonment for the conviction is not qualified to be a registered voter. So if you have a felony conviction, but you're now out of a correctional facility, can you currently vote or no?
Yes.
You can currently vote.
Yes.
That's what I thought. I thought that changed maybe in like 2020 or something, or 19, something like that. Okay, gotcha. So this wouldn't be changing. It's not giving anybody the ability to vote who doesn't have the ability, who wouldn't have the ability now. It's just re-registering them after they get out of after they got done serving their time.
Yeah,
Yes.
the bill's really designed to kind of streamline the process by which a person goes back into reentry and make it so that there's not some complicated hoops for them to jump through while they're going through reentry.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure I had that straight. So yeah, all right, I'm good.
Thank you very much, Delegate Tomlinson. Any other good questions for the committee here? All right. Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close out HB 115, and we're going to move over to HB 156. This is affiliating with a party voting for unaffiliated voters. I am well aware that it has a sponsor problem, so we don't need to cover that in the conversation. I want to cut into the meat of what the bill tries to do. And then we have a few minor amendment to the bill to make it more functional, to both make it more functional as well for consideration, as well as we have a pretty large amendment that will look at expanding the program as well as to discuss. So the bill basically says that unaffiliated voters, these are individuals who are unaffiliated. So we're not talking about Democrats, Republicans, we're not talking about Libertarians or Green Party members. These are the people who have signed up to register to vote as unaffiliated. They will be given the option on election day during early voting to go to their early voting center and re-register under a different party to vote that party's primary ballot. And so generally speaking, we're talking about the Democratic and Republican primary ballots. And so that unaffiliated voter can go into that early voting center and say, I would like to re-register as a Democrat and I want to vote the Democratic ballot, or I want to re-register as a Republican and vote the Republican primary ballot. They are permanently re-registered until they decide they want to register again as unaffiliated. So it gives them an opportunity for enfranchisement and to be involved in the primary process all the way up to the day of the election. The current process says that they must re-register by 11 days prior to the election in order to be considered for that primary. I believe it's 11 days, and I'll let Stan correct me if I've got the dates wrong. 11 days prior to the election in order to be able to register. Sorry,
21
Go ahead,
days.
Stan.
21 days.
21. Thank you. 21 days. Apologies. So 21 days prior, they have to have re-registered in order to vote in the primary. This will move that to add that additional component. So the 21 days will stay, but then during early voting, they would be able to vote in the early. They would be able to show up at the early voting center, and they would then be able to re-register at that moment and then vote what's called a provisional ballot. And so, and that would be accepted. The two amendments are, one is, like I said, very simple. It would look at moving the effective date of this bill from being an emergency bill to an effective date of 2028. That gives state board time to be able to implement these with existing resources instead of trying to push it for the 2026 election, which may end up having a pretty substantial fiscal note attached to it. And so that's the First Amendment. The second is to consider whether or not we want to, in addition to allowing this for early voting centers during early voting, if we want to allow this on election day as well across all the polling places across the state. Again, changes the process a bit, definitely puts more pressure on our local systems, but offers that additional opportunity for unaffiliated voters to be involved in the primary election process. And so with that, Stan, did I miss anything that you think was important to cover on the bill?
No, Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to turn it over for questions. And again, apologies for the internet connection issues. Delegate Tomlinson.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, I just want to clarify something. So right now, as a Republican or yourself as a Democrat, we can currently do this. It's just unaffiliates that can't. Is that correct?
So everyone has the ability to change their party affiliation at any time, except during when registration is closed, which starts 21 days before the primary and ends 11 days after. So this would just make an exception so that unaffiliated voters could change their affiliation at the polling place during early voting, and then vote the ballot of the party that they choose.
Oh, okay, got you. So actually, it's giving. Okay, so currently the way the law is set up, it's the same for unaffiliated Republicans, Democrats, whoever. This is actually giving this is making an exception for unaffiliated voters.
Yes.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, Delegate Terrassa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two questions. So one, and I don't know how I feel about this yet, but anyway, but why only unaffiliated voters? And then I can wait for the second question, or.
So unaffiliated voters are the largest growing sector in our jurisdictions across the state right now. I think that there's a lot of anxiety amongst party individuals, both in the Democratic and Republican Party and other parties as well, that there could be some unfortunate, things happen during primary elections if we opened it up for everybody. And so we said, why not allow unaffiliated to choose to affiliate with a party to vote in their primary, and make sure that we don't allow some kind of shenanigans to happen between the two major parties and others getting engaged in that. And so it's a genuine attempt to enfranchise unaffiliated voters and give them an opportunity for their voice to be heard, while also acknowledging, I will say generally the anxiety that a lot of people have about parties doing massive campaigns to flip parties and, to change party registration and vote in these elections to try to tip the balance on a primary to support their efforts in the general.
Okay. No, I get that anxiety. I'm just wondering, wouldn't somebody have the ability to just change to undecided 21 days before, then they could change it that day and then change it after again, theoretically?
Theoretically, they absolutely can. And
Okay.
that's something
Yeah.
we should consider.
So I just wound up with another question, which is, what about Green Party or other, like Libertarian, any of the other parties? They have to be unaffiliated, not any of the other.
That is correct. So we are looking at just unaffiliated voters. So it would not apply to anybody who is affiliated with a current party.
Okay. And then you said something about adding, could they do this in the general? But I'm not sure how that would help in any way, because you can vote for whoever in the general. So
I meant tipping the scales of the primary for the general. They're messing with the primary. Apologies.
Oh, no. I said in terms of an amendment. I thought you were talking about an amendment. You were asking how folks thought about whether this should only be allowed during the primary or whether we can do it during the general also.
Sorry, no. So to clarify that, it was the current bill, the way it's drafted, only applies to early voting and early voting.
Oh, sorry. Got it. Okay, sorry.
We
Yes.
wanted to add it to
My
election
mistake.
day.
Yeah,
no
my
worries.
mistake. Thank you.
No, thank you, Delegate Terrassa. And Delegate Sample Hughes, how are you?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this just to build off of Delegate Thomason's inquiry, and I understand now, as Stan was saying about the 21 days prior, I have that part. My question is, as it relates to being at the polls, what was said about that, the day of voting, how this affects that? That's the piece that I don't really understand.
Sure. So what the bill would do is it allows an unaffiliated voter during early voting to go to their early voting center, and they can choose to then affiliate with a party at that moment. So basically there'll be a re-registration. And so the unaffiliated voter can show up that day and say, I want to vote the Republican ticket, so I'm going to register as a Republican and re-affiliate at this moment with the Republican Party. And then they will get what's called a provisional ballot, and they'll be able to vote a provisional ballot because they weren't in the system. And then they'll be able to then vote the Republican ballot at that moment. And they'll be registered as a Republican until such time that they choose to re-register as unaffiliated again.
Okay, so they can go to the election board and make their decision with this, as well as at the physical polls on early voting or during early voting. So
I'm not sure they could be able to do it like that day at the Board of Elections. They'll be able to do it just at the early voting location.
Oh, so just at the early voting location, because it is 21 days prior. Correct? Okay.
No, so they can do that at the local board 21
Yes,
days prior.
okay, so that's what I was saying. They can do it at the local board.
Yep.
And they can also have the option at early voting poll to do the same.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if they didn't get it done 21 days prior, they have that second bite at the apple, for lack of a better word.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the piece. Okay, so it's actually offering them two options. Okay. All right, got it. Thank you.
Just to clarify
Oh.
too, during the period before 21 days before the election, they can actually choose to change their party affiliation. It doesn't have to be at the local board office. It could be online. It could be via paper form. Just any way that you register to vote, you can use that same method to change your party affiliation, as long as it's 21 days before the election.
All right, got it. Thank you.
Thank you so
Mr.
much.
Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Sample Hughes. Delegate Wilson, how are you?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two questions briefly. The first one, so how many other states currently do some kind of open system or system like this?
Based on the testimony that I believe we heard, I think there's up to 36 states that have various ways of semi-open or open primary systems.
Okay, thank you. The second question is, how, if any effect does this have on mail-in balloting? And walk me through the mail-in ballots, how this would affect individuals who plan on doing it by mail.
That's a great question. I don't think it would, but I'll defer to Stan to see if I'm missing something.
I know Stan.
Yes, no, this wouldn't change anything for mail-in voters. This is only for people who show up at the early voting center.
Right. And just the last follow-up, because obviously this sounds like, and I mean, this is purely selfish. It makes it much more challenging for the individuals running in the primaries, because obviously it increases the pool of individuals you have to reach out to. That's fine. But my concern really was, and I think you've kind of addressed it, but the whole shenanigans thing, a bunch of people switching to Republican to basically support a weaker candidate so they can again go to the Democrat, in the general and support their true candidate. And but it sounds like, to the best of your ability, you guys have resolved that. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's the exact needle that I think the bill's trying to thread, is trying to keep that shenanigans stuff down. So
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
thank you, Delegate Wilson. I appreciate it. Delegate Tomlinson, back over to you.
I just had kind of more of a general question that Delegate Terrassa brought up something, and I was thinking about this when the Board of Elections came in and gave their presentation. This question's probably for the state administrator. If I'm reading this correctly on the Maryland manual online, at this point, are the only recognized actual parties the Democratic Party and Republican Party? The others, like Green Party, they're not recognized anymore. Am I reading this correct?
I guess if that's me, I think right now we have a couple of other recognized political parties that are still eligible. I believe the Libertarian is there, but I'll double check on that one there for you. But yes, but this would only be for unaffiliated voters.
Yeah. I was just curious. I think I remember the Bread and Roses party kind of they lost
They lost their status. Yes.
yeah, but I wasn't sure about the others. Yeah, and Maryland Manual Online is saying that the others all are no longer recognized either. But I was just curious. It's really not important to this bill. I was just curious.
It's a good question, and so we'll look into it to see if we can find out more information on that. Thank you, Delegate Tomlinson. So, any other good questions on the on House Bill 156? Going once, twice. All right. So our final bill that we're going to be discussing today is House Bill 145. We have so we've had, I will say, this is a bill dealing with deepfakes. I'm going to give a little bit of a preamble here before we get into it. But this bill has been in committee a number of years. I sat on the election law subcommittee last year, and we hammered out a bunch of amendments to this bill and worked on this bill pretty closely for a long time. And then it ended up actually crossing the street, and they had a different version in the Senate. It went to conference committee last year. They did settle on negotiated language between the House and the Senate. And then that version was brought to both chambers and unfortunately was not able to be passed before midnight on sine die. We have received a number of amendments and requests from media broadcasters, from individuals. The state board has weighed in. The Senate has already weighed in on this with their own amended version. So my attempt to try to thread the needle, to try to move this conversation along a little quicker, I asked Stan to redraft the bill in its amended version from last year from the conference committee, and how they put this bill together, which had brought together all the stakeholders from the broadcasters and the telecommunications companies, all the way down to the individual senators and delegates that were working on this initiative, to see if we could kind of work off that as a baseline. So Camila, if you could do me a favor and just share your screen with the reprint that we submitted and sent out not too long ago. So apologies, we like to get these things to you a little earlier, but things have been hectic. So Camila's going to share her screen with the bill, and Stan, because there's so many moving components in here that still work, I would love it if you could walk the committee through the amended version of the bill.
Sure. So the amendment basically strikes the language that's currently in the bill and substitutes the language that was agreed to by the conference committee last session, as Delegate Fair just explained. So there's several pieces to this. So the first part, if you look at the definitions, it defines the deep fake. It also defines influence, which is currently defined in our election law. There's an exception for news media and satire or parody. And then the main provision is that a person may not, with fraudulent intent, influence or attempt to influence a voter's decision, whether or not to cast a ballot or whether to vote for or against a candidate or ballot issue by disseminating a deepfake. And then following that, it defines what it means when it says a person acts with fraudulent intent. So it's very specific about that, and that's following Attorney General's advice to make sure that it's constitutional. It also makes clear in subsection E that certain persons cannot be found to have violated the law because their services or facilities were used by another person to disseminate a deepfake in violation. So that's including social media companies, internet service providers, telecommunications network, and so forth. So under this amendment, the liability is with the person who actually creates, uses, posts, disseminates the deepfake, not with the underlying service provider whose facilities were used. And that's important because that's required by federal law. Under federal law, you can't hold online platforms liable for content posted by others. The penalties are provided for up to 5 years or a $5,000 fine. And then the last subsection is subsection G. And so that finds that, excuse me, that allows for the state board to request that the Attorney General seek an injunction against a person who is disseminating a deep fake in violation of the law, and provides for expedited process for that to happen if there's an appeal. The Attorney General would have to show by clear and convincing evidence that a violation of this section is being committed. So that is the amended bill.
Thank you very much, Stan. Delegate Wilson, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. DeMarinis.
Thank you. My question just goes to, we talk about keep them to vote for or against a candidate. So would this apply to people who create their own slates? I guess that would be the right word. A lot of times people go and they're at they're running for office and they create a slate with themselves on it. And, they put, the governor, the AG, sometimes they look very official. Would this encapsulate those as well?
It would cover any person who knowingly and willfully with fraudulent intent disseminates a deep fake to try to influence somebody's vote. So I guess that would potentially include a slate if a slate did that.
But meaning if it wasn't a real slate, like if I decide to run for, let's say, Senate, and I include my delegates as, my running mates, even though we haven't talked and they're not supportive of me, would that be considered a violation of this law?
Only if they used a deep fake to deliver with fraudulent intent, so deliberate intention to lie, and they used a deep fake to try to influence somebody's vote, then this would apply. But it wouldn't apply like if I think maybe the question you're getting at is if they just said that they had your support or that you'd supported them, and that was a lie, would this apply? And the answer is no, because this is only about deep fakes. So if it would have to be a communication that qualified under the definition of deep fake to be prohibited under this law.
So which I think the deepfake language specifically says that it has to be intentionally created or manipulated with the use of generative artificial intelligence or other digital technology. So if I'm just simply taking a picture of the three of my colleagues together and saying Delegate Simpson and Delegate Curry each endorse me when that's not the case, or they all support me and we're running together as a slate when that's not the case, that wouldn't apply to this bill. That's correct, Stan?
Yes,
always
exactly.
looking for confirmation. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Delegate Wilson. Delegates Rasa, before we get to your questions, I want to kind of add a layer to this because I know that Mr. DeMarinis, you worked on this bill over the interim. I know this is a little different than the Senate version that you've seen. I would appreciate it if you could weigh in a little bit especially if you have concerns with this iteration of the bill.
So over the interim, I had worked with both the senator and the delegate Feldmark over this bill here, and trying to work out, because it didn't pass, maybe we can improve it, see what we can do with, it over the before the next session. And that's where we had worked out the newer language, which was a little bit different, especially on the idea of a material fact versus something that was materially false. Those are more reflective of when we were reviewing other legislation nationally as well as on the federal side. That was kind of a different standard there, and also kind of bifurcating the system here, allowing me as a state administrator to handle deep fakes a little bit differently than the state prosecutor, by going after a deep fake earlier, so that the impact of the deep fake is not felt beyond, if the intent is to mislead or to basically disenfranchise individuals. As we all know, that Maryland has had issues with use of technology to try to disenfranchise individuals. So that was kind of where we were trying to look at it and try to look at for speed and making sure that the ability for me to help correct that record sooner, while also making sure that the state prosecutor had the ability to prosecute post election as well and build a case against the bad actors here. So that's where we were coming up. We looked at it, and as the collective there, that's where it was. And the Senate has recently passed their version of it with all the amendments to take care of the press entities' concerns on that. So that's where we were on this one here. I know that we were scrambling last year to get all the compromises there, and this was kind of like, now we had the time to reflect and see what we had, and and then that was the original version of 145 was the product output.
So setting aside the material fact question, and we'll cut into that at a later time. But if Camila, can you go down to G1? I think that so your primary concern here would be the speed at which the administrator can directly look at this issue versus assigning it to the Attorney General. Is that correct, Mr. Demeritis? And then Stan, I will turn it over to you. I promise.
So as you can see, that goes through a little bit there, whereas now in the original version and under C1, right, it's about receiving a credible report, and then the communication, seeking the injunction, issuing a subpoena, and then basically then also having the ability to initiate a civil action against some of the bad actors to incur that, because us correcting the record or having to buy ads to facilitate to counter the disinformation that is out there would have costs, and so that we would be able to seek some damages and court costs there against certain bad actors, excluding, of course, press and everything else, because that's what was worked out in the Senate side there. So that was kind of a little bit of a nuanced change from where it is in this one here.
Gotcha. And Stan, with that, I want to turn it over to you. Would there be legal concerns about the state administrator being able to subpoena and go through this process independently?
I don't think so. I think the issue is that you can't treat an online platform as if they're a publisher, so you can't seek an injunction against an online platform. And I would have doubts about whether you can subpoena them for records about the dissemination of content on their platform that was posted by somebody else. I would have serious doubts about that, but you definitely can't get an injunction against the platform. You can get an injunction against the person who posted the deepfake. And that was one of the flaws with the bill as introduced this year, is that it doesn't make clear that the injunction and the lawsuit is against the person who put up the deepfake online, not against the platform. And I think that's what a lot of the advocates for the industry are concerned about, and they still have concerns about this bill. So that's one thing. As you just pointed out, Mr. Chairman, the language of the conference committee last year does allow for injunctions. So it does allow for rapid response if there's a deepfake being distributed that is interfering with people's right to vote. And also on the material fact, that is also in last year's agreed upon language. So that was an important aspect of that language, is that it included that the lie has to be about a fact that's material to a voter's decision. So that's in this last year's language, and it's in the language that's before you now. So there's really not any difference on that.
Thank you. I appreciate both of you.
I just wanted to mention the amendments did clarify that on the Senate version, because that was because all the exemptions that Stan had mentioned were then also applied to the civil action as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, so a lot of them then were very happy with how it came about and no longer object to that ability there. So I just wanted to clarify that the Senate did kind of amend that because we did see those concerns.
Thank you for that, Mr. Demarinis, and I appreciate both of your education on this issue. Delegate Tomlinson, we're going to turn over for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to follow up with Delegate Wilson's question. If I can just throw out another scenario here. So it sounds like this law, so it sounds like if I put out a mailer or had a palm card that showed me and Donald Trump together, and I said that Donald Trump had endorsed me, it sounds like this law, under this law, there would be nothing wrong with that. But my question is, if I used technology to have a robocall, which I don't even know if robocalls are even, I'm probably dating myself here, but if I did a robocall and had Trump's voice, using technology to have Trump's voice say that he had endorsed me and that I'm his MAGA guy and please vote for Delegate Tomlinson, would this bill apply to that second scenario?
Yes.
Okay, so not the first one, but yes to the second.
If, and I'm sorry if I didn't get all the details of your first scenario, but if they use technology to create a false image showing somebody doing something that they didn't do, then it would be covered by this. So I think that I'm sorry, go ahead.
So if I used AI to put up, like, I don't have a picture of Donald Trump. I've never met him. So if I used AI to create a fake picture of Donald Trump and I, my arm around him or something, that would fall under this bill. But if I actually had a real picture with Donald Trump and just said that he endorsed me, that would not, this bill or law would not apply to that.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay, so fake image, bad, real image, just saying he endorsed me. Okay.
That is true.
All right, thanks.
Fun fact, both people running for office are allowed to lie during their election process, and it's constitutionally protected by the Supreme Court. So, Delegate Terrazzo, over to you.
Okay, sort of on a slightly different note, these exemptions confuse me because I guess they refer to those platforms as a person. But if the person posting is from one of those platforms, are they still not liable, or they're just not liable for actions of somebody else? Like, let's say I work for, I don't know, a telecommunication network or a newspaper, website, personal, whatever, periodical, and I publish what would otherwise be considered a deep fake. I'm not exempt because I work for one of those, am I?
No, and that's why it says the following persons may not be found to have violated this section because the person's services or facilities were used by another person to disseminate a deepfake in violation of this section. So it's only if your services or facilities are used to disseminate the deepfake that this wouldn't apply to you. If you do it yourself, then yeah, you're liable.
Is that clear enough in E under the amended language?
I think it is because it says that the person's services or facility because the person's services or facilities are used by another person to disseminate. So it's narrowing the scope of that exemption so that it's just if your services or facilities are being used by another person. But it could always be
It could be
clearer.
merely because, I mean, I don't know if we even use that word in statute, but I mean, that's sort of what you're saying. They can't be found to have violated the section merely because the person's service was used.
Yeah, I mean, we could say only maybe, or yeah,
I mean, I leave that to you all, but I'm just not sure. I wouldn't want that to be an out just because you owned one of those. or had one of those services.
Can definitely work with you on refining language, Delegate.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you very much for that great upgrade, Delegate Tarasa. Over to you, Delegate Wilson.
Again, thank you, Mr. Chair. This going back to the enforcement mechanisms. It sounded like there was I'll say bit of consternation about administrative enforcement. And so am I to understand that we don't believe that we can get an administrative subpoena for records from one of these platforms?
I just don't know. I doubt it, but that maybe it can be done. That's something to look into further.
Okay, because I know that, they do it all the time for criminal. That's exactly what they do. And they send a subpoena out and they get your records for 180 days and stuff like that. And I would because my question would be to Jared's, his the immediacy of the situation, being able to at least while the suit is going on, if I'm doing something illegal and it's staying up while this investigation is happening, it's still doing a great deal of damage.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, and my worry is, I think what Jared was talking about was having some immediate action and him being able to, move as quickly administratively as possible, because we all know criminally, even through the AG, this takes a while. And I just want to make sure that this bill is doing, Stan, what your intent is obviously stopping them from unduly influencing an election. And I don't want to limit our administrative capabilities, because I know we do have administrative subpoenas. I know that they can be, pretty much treated the same as a criminal subpoena as far as timeliness. And I might be wrong, but I want to make sure that the bill actually does what we intended to do, which is allow the administrative process. Because again, if we rely on the criminal sanctions of process, that takes quite a while. The election will be way over before, and I just want to make sure we have a way in there to enjoin them from posting these things once they've been caught.
Yeah,
Very
absolutely. So subsection G specifically provides for the state board to get an injunction against a criminal deepfake. So that's in the amended bill and was in last year's conference amendments. The one thing I would mention with regard to the criminal investigation, one of the concerns with the bill as introduced was that it didn't actually have to be in the information that could be enjoined didn't have to necessarily wouldn't have necessarily been criminally in violation of the criminal law. So it would have applied to election disinformation, which is knowingly false, and also election misinformation, which is not knowingly false, which was not being criminalized. So it would have allowed for an injunction against speech that was not criminalized under the bill. So in that sense, it's constitutionally suspect. But the subpoena question is something that we can definitely look into further and make sure that that that's carrying out the intent, as you say.
And Stan, I'm not questioning your voting acumen. I know that you're brilliant on this. I just want to make sure that if we're going to pass something, that it actually has the teeth that we need. Thank you, bud.
I agree. And so I think that's a great opportunity for us to, unless there's more questions, I want to pause there. And Delegate Wilson, I would love to pull you in on chatting more about this bill coming and looking at that issue together to see if we can find the threading that needle a little bit with the state administrator as well, to see if we can figure out how to get all of those components in there to make sure there's an expeditious way of dealing with this deep fakes and disinformation. Thank you. And folks, is there any other questions on House Bill 145 at this time? We're not voting today. We are going to potentially be voting on Wednesday. We have some bills coming up at the Wednesday at noon subcommittee meeting. We're going to be discussing the Maryland Voting Rights Act bills, just so you can prep yourselves now. There's 3 of them for us to have discussion on, as well as we might have a few bills that we're going to be voting out of subcommittee, hopefully voting, if it's the will, to vote out of subcommittee on Wednesday. So with that, we're going to go ahead and close out the meeting and adjourn. Thank you all so much for joining us today. and I look forward to seeing you next week.